Food's ready, come and get it.
71-year-old Jack Davis is busy preparing one of his famous roasts for his neighbors.
Main thing that he really loved to do was cook. And every Sunday, he would cook up a whole lot of meats.
Hi, Jack. Something smells good.
Don't it, though?
Nobody would go hungry because he always would give food. He loved doing stuff in the community with helping other people. He felt that the people in the neighborhood was family. Sometimes, especially in the summertime, you would see him coming and going in his RV. I know he loved having it and loved going out and coming back.
Jack recently sold his RV for $100,000. The cash lump sum will boost his finances as he slows down during his twilight years.
Here comes trouble. It's cooking, Jack.
Jack, first of all, he was a school teacher, and then he was a bailiff at the courthouse, and he did part-time work at the hospital as a security guard.
Got any chicken left for me?
You know, our community is pretty much close-knit. On the most part, everybody in our neighborhood know each other by name. We associate a lot and everything together than just hanging out, laughing and carrying on. So he was like a big brother to me.
Special sleep.
Thank you.
That Sunday, we talked, you know, just randomly talked for a few minutes, and I got the meats, and then I went on home.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
Girl Scout Road. She's at a dead person.
Okay, I can't, listen to me, I can't hear both of you at one time.
Okay.
Shortly after 11 p.m. on July 19th, 2015, the 911 center received a phone call from Marcy Lynn Rouse requesting law enforcement. She had advised that her neighbor, Jack Davis Jr., had been shot.
She said she went to the house, and when she went in, he was laying on the floor. He was laying on the floor. Blood. He'd been shot in the head. It looked like he'd been shot in the head. It's okay.
In the background was the girlfriend of Jack Davis Jr., who also is the one who found Mr. Jack Davis when she arrived at his residence. And she was somewhat distraught and kind of screaming in the background.
Have a possible death report. The caller is advising that she's not exactly sure what happened.
It was initially thought it was either a suicide or a home invasion.
When officers arrive on scene, they walk around to the back of the residence where there's an entrance to an enclosed garage area that had been turned into a den. They noticed Jack lying in the floor, and there was blood pooled about his head. There was canes, a firearm, all sorts of things scattered around. At the time, they believed that he had shot himself with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the mouth or to the head.
They realized that the victim was still breathing, was still alive.
As Jack Davis is rushed to the hospital in critical condition, Detective Brock arrives on scene to speak with the neighbor who called 911.
Marcy Rouse said that she had gone over sometime midday to Jack Davis's residence. I asked her about his state of mind.
We had a barbecue earlier today. Everything was fine. There was no problems. He was in good humor. There's nothing different.
I never thought suicide attempt because that's just not the person that I knew of Jack to be. And I was gone all day, but it was dark when I came home. And I was in my bedroom in the back of my house. It sounded like a child screaming and crying. So I went to my front door, and it was this lady running across the street to my house. And it happened to be the girlfriend. And she was asking me, I'm sorry, she was asking me to call 911 because something had happened to Jack. And so that's when I called 911.
How is Jack? Is he gonna make it?
EMS are working on him right now.
I was very scared I'm sure everybody in the street, on the neighborhood, was scared because we didn't know what had happened.
I don't know who would do this to Jack.
At 3 a.m., Marcy's son, Douglas, arrives on scene and notices that something is missing from Jack's property.
After I interviewed Marcy Rouse, her son arrived. He advised that Jack Davis's truck was no longer there. Talking to Marcy Rouse and her son, one of the things that they did say was the fact that nobody else should have the truck. One of the first questions is who has Mr. Jack Davis's truck and where is it at? We put a bolo or be on the lookout for Jack Davis's truck.
Detectives searched the house for the weapon that inflicted the wounds to Jack.
We checked the firearms on scene, and the firearm in question was a long rifle, a .22 caliber long rifle that has a tube that holds 10 bullets and also an initial bullet in the chamber. And all 11 bullets were inside of the firearm, and it was clean. You know, it had no evidence of blood or anything of that nature. So we pretty much casted out the doubt that, you know, that there was any self-inflicted gunshot wound, at least with that firearm. They go through the resident, and in some areas of the house, everything was tidy and neat. They would get to another room where everything had been dumped out of the drawers. The bed has been looked under.
The truck was missing. The residence appeared to be somewhat kind of ransacked. There was a possible struggle. At this point, we're appearing to change our position to maybe it was a home invasion like that may indicate something other than a suicide.
Detectives head outside to look for video surveillance cameras.
We come to find out Jack had a camera facing the back door where we had entered, and he also had a camera that pointed out toward the backyard that showed a shop in the backyard, the driveway where the pickup truck was supposed to have been parked.
We need to find the DVR for that.
Sure thing.
These two angles that we had would show who had entered and who had left Mr. Jack Davis's residence. It also would show possibly who took the truck, when the last person was at the residence, what time the truck left. We observed that Jack Davis in the den area had a surveillance monitor. It showed the cameras on the exterior of the residence.
This is a live feed. Find out if the system recorded any footage from lunchtime onward.
On it. When I look over to the DVR, I see a light blinking that showed that it was actually recording.
The detectives take the surveillance footage to the police department for review.
We knew that the camera system, if it was working properly, would have valuable information as to who had been at the residence and some details of what had happened during the day.
Looks like it's working.
We started the footage from earlier that day. We knew that he had started cooking around lunchtime.
The cookout is over by 1:45 p.m., and the camera captures no activity around the back door for over 6 hours.
Throughout the day, with the cookout, there were people there. After they left, nobody came by.
It didn't appear to be nothing out of the norm.
Detectives watch the footage up to 8:20 p.m.
It wasn't until later on that evening when we observed two individuals arriving at the back door that caught our attention. As we're looking at the camera video surveillance system, approximately 8:21 p.m., we observed a male and a female come around the corner of the residence.
Who are these guys?
They walk to the back door of Mr. Jack Davis' residence, and the male knocks on the door. The female stood behind the male, and then we could tell what we believed to be Jack Davis coming to the door and opening the door and answering the door. When we first saw that video, it appeared that he was a taller male, kind of bigger, stocky.
Zoom in on the female.
The female appeared to have maybe a ponytail.
Play that again.
You see the male individual bum rush or run towards whoever had opened the door, which is who we believe was Jack at the time. And then you see the female walk in shortly after and close the door.
We continue watching the video to see if they come out. Does Mr. Jack Davis come out with them? Does anybody else arrive?
Okay, who's this guy?
Approximately 8:24, the door appears to be open. At that point in time, we see an individual approach the door from the outside. The female opens the screen door, moves to the side, and lets a male come in the residence. Once the door shuts again, we see another male show up at the door, and he opens the door and goes in, and then the door shuts again.
So there's two more males entering the residence? Let's see that again.
What we could tell about the second male is he appeared to be wearing darker clothes, and the third male entered the residence, and he appeared to be wearing lighter colored clothes, but we could not see their faces at that point in time. It appeared that she knew they were coming because she opened the door for them. She knew who they were because she willingly let them in. The restricting part is the fact that we can't see what's going on inside the residence. Approximately 30 seconds to a minute later, the male with the light-colored clothes exits the residence in the same direction he had entered at a fast pace. We know something appears to be happening. There's more panic, and he leaves in a hurry, and nobody leaves with him.
Looks like he's desperate to get out of there.
Approximately 8:27, we see the female exit the residence, and then the other two males. It appeared that the male in the dark clothes had something in his hand. It appeared to be some type of a box.
We're obviously thinking, all right, this has been a robbery. This is what has occurred. Now, what was their goal? What was the end goal? What did they steal? What was in that box?
And the male in the pattern clothes had some type of a item in his hand. We weren't sure at that point in time, but it appeared to be some type of a weapon.
Is that a shotgun?
We concluded that these more than likely the people that were involved with what happened to Mr. Jack Davis.
Jack Davis remains in critical condition. He is unable to answer the detective's questions about who attacked him.
At that point in time, the CCTV is the only lead that we had to go off as to identifying who these people were and to be able to speak with them and find out what their role in this crime was.
Where do they go when they leave the house? Run the footage from the second camera.
So we switched to the camera angle showing the backyard. We could see the Ford pickup truck in the backyard. The female goes to the vehicle and gets in the driver's side. Shortly thereafter, the two males come out. We could tell that the male in the pattern shirt was in the back bed of the truck. When they backed out of the driveway.
At daybreak, detectives hunt for more surveillance footage that could unlock the suspects' identities.
At 615 Girl Scout Road, we located a camera on the front side of the residence pointing out toward the roadway.
Hi, sir.
So we made contact with the resident there and eventually was able to obtain that video, which we brought to the station. As we were watching the video, they had sound too. We could see several vehicles go by. At one point, we saw a vehicle go by, and it appeared to go by a couple of times.
Play that again.
We could tell that the vehicle appeared to be some type of a sports car or possibly a red vehicle.
What make and model car is that?
What we see looks like a darker color Mustang.
Sounds like it's slowing down.
We could hear the vehicle slow down. Out of camera range, and also we could hear it speed back up again. As we continued to watch, shortly after that, we see a small vehicle approach from the Truman Avenue area, which is the road just down from Mr. Jack Davis' house.
Let's see that again.
The vehicle pulls in front of the residence. We could tell it was a little small SUV of some sort. After looking at the video, I concluded that it's possibly a RAV4. Couldn't tell the color of it, but it had a two-tone bottom to it. We saw that vehicle stop, and we heard the door shut. The vehicle drove off down Truman Avenue, and we continued to watch. And at that point, we saw the two males that had entered the house second after the male and the female. We saw them walking across the street toward Mr. Jack Davis' house.
Zoom in there.
We're trying to figure out who drives this RAV4 and who drives this Mustang because they were both in the area at the time that the crime was committed. The morning of July 21st, which is just 2 days after this event's occurred, we receive a call from a neighboring agency in another county, the Craven County Sheriff's Office. They call to report that they have found Mr. Davis's vehicle wrecked on the shoulder of the road and abandoned.
So I responded down to Riverside Road where the vehicle had been located. I made contact with the neighboring resident there. She was on scene, and she said that her son had noticed the vehicle there that Sunday night between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. And the vehicle had been sitting there since then.
And the significance is that at 11 o'clock on Sunday, I had gotten a call to respond to Jack Davis's house in regards to the incident itself. It was our understanding that the suspects had obviously driven this to an isolated, location and then ditched the vehicle in hopes of, getting away.
The crime lab responded. We noticed, first of all, that the vehicle was parked on the side of the road. It appeared to be partially in the ditch, and the driver's side window had been broken out of. Once we got in the vehicle, we located Mr. Jack Davis's wallet, the box that appeared to be taken from the residence, and some miscellaneous items, but no money.
The black box is open, it's empty. So either they found what they were looking for, or maybe they're still looking. We don't know. The canine teams called in to conduct this track and this article search to search for articles left behind and search for our suspects. And the canines, they lead the officers down a dirt path, approximately 100 yards down that path, where the scent kind of dries up.
Kingston PD tows Jack's pickup to the police garage. Forensics officers process the vehicle.
Detectives start collecting samples from the inside. They're swabbing the steering wheel.
The CSI team finds no fingerprints and no usable DNA.
It's a bummer. It brings you down a little bit. It just puts a little bit more grit in us to keep on working harder until we solve this case.
Later that day, our investigators followed up with the hospital to check the status of Mr. Davis. We knew that he was in very serious condition, but we didn't know how serious. And that's when we were notified that Mr. Davis had passed away from his injuries.
The hospital that treated Jack calls Marcy Rouse.
Hello?
I was hoping that he would pull through, but it was just shocking, it was saddened, it was hurtful to know that he had passed away. And for a good person like Jack was, nice as he was, to have to life to be taken away the way that it was taken. It was tough.
It just felt like a bottomless pit in my bottom of my stomach, you know, when I found out he had died.
So for the suspects, it goes from committing a robbery, a home invasion, and a violent assault to now they're murderers. Now the stakes are much more higher for them. It's a rapidly evolving case.
Hello, Detective Brock speaking.
So about 4 hours after we're notified that Mr. Davis has been pronounced deceased at the hospital, we did receive a phone call from our 911 center who notified us that an anonymous tipster called and said that they may know who is involved in that particular murder, and they wanted an investigator to give them a call.
Copy that.
For this particular case, you know, we've got video, we've got the vehicle, we've got so much physical evidence, but we still don't have enough to charge anybody. We still need somebody to identify them, and now we're getting this call into the 911 center saying, we know who did it. We know the names. At that point, you know, the blood's pumping, adrenaline's going. It's time to solve this case.
This is Detective Brock. You have some information about the Jack Davis case?
And the next day, we were able to make contact with the caller. The caller advised that we needed to look into Phoenix Hannibal, as they were involved with the murder of Jack Davis. Phoenix Hannibal knew Jack Davis from the neighborhood. Jack Davis supposedly had quite a bit of money from the sale of an RV. People in the neighborhood felt like he had a lot of money from that sale. It appeared that multiple individuals apparently planned to enter the house to rob Jack, because it was known that he apparently had quite a bit of cash in the residence from the sale of that RV.
Detectives invite the female suspect, Phoenix Hannibal, to talk about Jack Davis's murder.
As we're standing there waiting for her to arrive, she arrives driving the Toyota RAV4 that's seen in the surveillance video in front of Mr. Davis's house. It was exciting to know that we had that piece of evidence right here. She brought it to us, but it also told us that she didn't believe we knew anything.
Investigators questioned Phoenix about her movements on the night of Jack's murder.
When we first get Phoenix Hannibal in the interview room, you can tell that she's not going to provide a lot of information.
And let me ask you this. Did you have any point in this conversation whatsoever? I did not.
Once we brought the vehicle into it, Then she began to change slightly. Then she would give us a little bit.
We got you on video driving. It's your car.
Yeah.
You don't find it strange, though, that you drove by the house?
All I know is that they asked me to give them a ride. He asked me to give his friends a ride. Trust me.
Well, why didn't you call us and tell us?
I don't know something.
I think you're trying to cover up something.
I'm not
I can look at
covering
your shirt. It's shaking.
Phoenix admitted to dropping 2 individuals off, but denied knowing anything about who they were or what their intentions were. She did not, at that time, give the names of the individuals involved. Later that afternoon, she was brought back in.
We don't have all day.
The Mexican boy named Jonathan.
Jonathan?
I don't know his last name. Y'all can't make me think of a last name. If I make up a last name and then y'all go to find him, and it's a lie.
All right.
His name is Jonathan.
She gives us the name Jonathan, and she says that she doesn't know who they are. She's never met them before, and she's just giving them a ride.
She tells us that Jonathan and another unknown male rode with her.
At this point, one of the 2 males we still did not know the name of.
Through our investigative channels and different means of identifying people, we were able to identify that Jonathan was actually a young Hispanic male known as Jonathan Ordonez.
Jonathan Ordonez was the last person to get to the house, the first one to leave out of the house. We were able to corroborate that through her interview as well as through CCTV.
After Jonathan was arrested and brought down to the station to be interviewed, he really shined some light on this case. As we're talking to him, he admits to offering to help in this robbery. But at no point in time was this robbery supposed to turn into a murder.
Was he down when you went in? I don't know. You do? John. I know. I went in there. And I think they were holding him down. And when I went in the room, came back out, he was on the floor and they were hitting him.
This case is a particularly brutal crime to be committed. It's even more brutal when the people that you're arresting for this crime are in their late teens. You know, Jonathan was 16 years old at the time this was committed.
Investigators need to identify the second man in Phoenix's car. But first, they focus on who was driving the other vehicle.
The Mexican that was driving, his name was Adrian Lopez. Okay?
Yes, I believe you because I know Adrian.
I don't want to snitch, but I don't want to be
snitching. It's covering your ass.
That's when she realizes it's in her best interest to cooperate. Throughout that cooperation, she tells us that the Mustang is associated also with Adrian Lopez.
She said Adrian Lopez was the one who dropped off the other 2 people that we saw on Mr. Jack Davis's cameras, and she actually gave the names.
It was Jaime there. It was a girl named Fanny.
Adrian Lopez was actually the one that drove Jaime Torres and the female known as Finney to the house. She was adamant that she had no idea who Finney was.
I could write down the name, and you could check that out. And, like, you know what I'm saying? When that's it. The girl, she's a young girl. The only thing that I know about the girl, they call her Finney.
But eventually, it came out that Finney was Infinity Jones. And Phoenix was able to positively identify her as being the female that was in the video. So the puzzle had really come together at this point. We've been given all these names. We have Adrian Lopez, Jaime Torres, we have Infinity Jones, and we have Jonathan Ordonez. But we still have one that we don't know.
Investigators locate Jaime Torres and bring him to the police department for questioning.
Jack had taken Jaime under his wing, him and his brothers, and gave them odd jobs around the house.
Potentially, Jaime knew about the RV sale and the large sum of money that should have been there.
I was hoping to get the truth from him, being that he knew Jack personally. I interviewed Jaime Torres. He refused to give a statement. However, he did admit to being there at Jack Davis's during the crime, but says he don't remember anything about what had happened.
Jonathan Ordonez admits to knowing Jaime Torres, and he tells us he sees Jaime Torres attacking Jack Davis.
We saw Jaime, his physical description, his hair, everything looked similar to the video surveillance we had seen. So we knew that we could put him there as the person who entered the residence. Him admitting that he had been there during the crime, that gave us probable cause to arrest him for his role in that crime.
Next, investigators arrest Adrian Lopez, the driver of the Mustang that dropped off Jaime Torres and Infinity Jones.
We brought him down to the police department where we wanted to conduct an interview because we still had one piece of the puzzle that was missing. We didn't know who this other guy was that was seen on the surveillance video.
While she was distracting, who was supposed to be taking the stuff? I guess Johnny will come in or just open the door. And like I said, I ain't know the plan. Just a little bit I did hear. And then they were like, nah, just take Jaime and see me up there. And that was the last I heard of it. That was it.
During the interview with Adrian Lopez, he tells us that he's the one that had drove Jaime Torres and Infinity Jones. And through that association and his involvement with her, we're able to identify the last male as Johnny Sanders.
Hey, it's Goy. We have a name. Johnny Ray Sanders.
We know he's a dangerous individual, so we want to go ahead and locate him as soon as possible because we know that he's violent, and we don't want him to commit this on anybody else.
Police have in custody Phoenix Hannibal, Jaime Torres, Jonathan Ordonez, and Adrian Lopez. Now they need to trace the two remaining suspects, Infinity Jones and Johnny Ray Sanders.
Officers located Infinity Jones and brought her to the police department for an interview.
Who went with who? It was me, Jamie, and Adrian's car. Jamie done got up. Him and Jonathan done flew to the back.
Through our interview with Infinity, she was able to make us aware that Johnny was the one that was mainly responsible for actually delivering the blows that would kill Mr. Jack Davis.
And Johnny was like, you don't speak, because I'm a female, you already knew I was going to tell, I'm scared. But, he was like, you don't see nothing. You know, it's that. And if any one of y'all snitch, I'll kill y'all.
Police intensify the hunt for Johnny and release his mugshot to the media.
We know that Johnny Sanders was the one that likely dealt the last blows to Mr. Davis that ended his life. We immediately start following up on leads, and within an hour or two of doing that, we get a phone call from Wilson County Sheriff's Office, and they tell us that Johnny has just walked in their front door to turn himself in.
Detective Brock.
I responded to Wilson Police Department with another officer.
I'll be right there.
To pick up Johnny Sanders. He told us that he had turned himself in after he had seen his picture on TV, that he was wanted for first-degree murder.
What's up, man?
He gives us a statement that he's never stepped foot in Jack Davis's house, but we know that to be a lie based on everything else we've discovered during this investigation.
Did you see him? Did you even know anything about the guy?
No, I don't even know.
Murdered in Sunday?
I don't even know, dude. I seen his picture the same day I seen the date when I seen my face on the news. I was like, nah, they ain't gonna
About the guy that died?
Yep.
You ain't know nothing about that?
I don't know nothing about him.
Arresting Johnny Sanders, you know, it was, in my opinion, one of the most important pieces of the puzzle because his role in the incident was the most violent.
News reaches Jack Davis's friends that police have arrested 6 people in connection with his murder.
That's something that you really can't put into words. When you see on the news that they've arrested several, people, you just want to know, why did it happen?
I felt like it was just totally senseless. These young people ruin their life over trying to steal a few measly dollars.
Phoenix Hannibal and Infinity Jones both plead guilty to second-degree murder. Adrian Lopez pleads guilty to robbery with a dangerous weapon. Jonathan Ordonez pleads guilty to first-degree burglary. These four receive sentences between 4 and 16.5 years. Johnny Sanders and Jaime Torres plead not guilty to first-degree murder. At their trials, prosecutors step through the events that led to Jack Davis's murder.
Jaime and Phoenix, they knew Jack Davis Jr. They were limited friends. They would go up there and visit him from time to time.
Thanks, my man.
They were aware that he sold an RV for a good, sizable amount of money. In their minds, there was a substantial amount of cash located in the house. On the evening that Jack was murdered, the plan took place for everyone to meet at Phoenix's residence. Phoenix was to drive Johnny and Jonathan. Adrian drove Infinity and Jaime in his vehicle, so they took two separate vehicles to Jack's house, dropped everybody off.
Jaime Torres and Infinity Jones entered the house first. Jaime tackled Jack Davis. They started fighting. Mr. Jack Davis was getting the better of Jaime. Infinity picked up a police-style flashlight and hit Jack Davis with it. Jack took the flashlight. She opened the door for Johnny Sanders and Jonathan Ordonez to come into the residence. Johnny Sanders saw Jack Davis was getting the better of Jaime Torres. He started beating Jack Davis over the head with the short shotgun. At which point, Jack Davis stopped fighting. At that point, Jonathan Ordonez left out of the house. The other three remainers, Infinity Jones, Jaime Torres, and Johnny Sanders, grabbed some items from the house and left the scene, leaving Jack Davis there to die, essentially. Once they left with Mr. Jack Davis's pickup truck, they drove to Craven County. Johnny Sanders parked the pickup truck on the side of the road, wiped it down, and then they went back to the residence where it was reported that they split the money in Jack Davis's wallet.
The whole reason for this orchestrated attempt to steal Mr. Davis's money that he had just come into from the sale of his RV was all flawed, because after we conducted an investigation, it was determined that Jack Davis had actually placed his money in the bank where it would be safe and not in his home. And Mr. Davis was such a large pillar of the community, and he'd done so much to help the very people that killed him.
He was killed and murdered because he was a giving person and wanted to help people out.
As a result of the trial of Johnny Sanders and Jaime Torres, both were found guilty of first-degree murder, and they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While we can't bring Jack Davis back, it was somewhat satisfying, the fact that we did solve the case and we were able to get justice for Jack Davis and Jack Davis's family.
The video in this case was what broke the case. Without the video, it would have been extremely difficult to piece this together, and I don't know if we ever would have solved it without the CCTV.
I don't think that Jack would want us to just continue to mope. We just have to pick up and just keep it going.
I miss Jack's friendliness in the neighborhood, his kindness, his giving spirit, cookouts.
Jack, you're very missed. Wish that you were still here. Miss the conversation, miss the smile, I miss the joke, and I just miss seeing him coming and going. Would love for him to still be here on our block in the neighborhood.
The desert keeps its secrets longer than people do, but not forever. It starts with a sound no one can explain. A metallic echo. Hollow. Repeating. Late at night, drifting across the dry Arizona air just outside a quiet stretch of highway in Maricopa County. People hear it, then dismiss it. Wind through scrap. Loose fencing. Something natural. Something harmless. But on the morning of August 17, 1999, that sound is replaced by something else. Silence. The kind of silence that presses down, thick and unnatural, like the desert itself is holding its breath. At 6:42 a.m., a highway patrol unit reports an abandoned vehicle pulled just off Route 85. Engine cold. Driver's door slightly open. No signs of forced entry. No blood. No struggle. Just absence. The car belongs to 27-year-old Daniel Mercer. And Daniel Mercer is gone. No footprints. No drag marks. No witnesses. Just a wallet still sitting on the passenger seat and the keys still in the ignition. A cold case is born before anyone even realizes it. Daniel Mercer wasn't the kind of man who vanished. Not according to everyone who knew him. No history of trouble. No debts. No enemies. A mechanical engineer by trade, recently promoted, recently engaged, recently stable. That's what makes it wrong. That's what makes it stick. His fiancée, Laura Bennett, is the first to say it out loud in a trembling voice that barely holds together during the initial interview. He wouldn't leave his car like that. 3 days later, the search expands. Helicopters sweep low across the desert. Volunteers comb through miles of unforgiving terrain. Dogs pick up a scent near the vehicle then lose it abruptly, as if Daniel Mercer simply stopped existing mid-step. Detectives start asking questions that don't fit the picture. Why was he out there at that hour? Why that road? Why no call, no message, no sign of distress? And then comes the first crack in the story. A gas station receipt. Time-stamped 1:13 a.m., nearly 40 miles away from where his car was found. Surveillance footage shows Daniel walking inside, calm, composed but not alone. There's someone behind him. A figure. Blurry. Indistinct. Just outside the frame, long enough to be seen, never long enough to be identified. The clerk doesn't remember them. The cameras don't capture their face. But the distance between Daniel and that shadow feels deliberate. Close but not together. Watching but not interacting. Investigators mark it as a lead. Then they lose it. Days turn into weeks. Weeks into months. The desert gives nothing back. No body. No weapon. No motive. Only questions that grow heavier with time. Laura stops answering calls from reporters after the 3rd week. Friends say she starts sleeping with the lights on. Says she hears things outside her window at night. Says someone is watching. Police dismiss it. Stress. Trauma. Grief. But the report is logged anyway. Then filed away. Then forgotten. By the end of 1999, the case cools. By 2001, it's frozen. A file in a cabinet. A name on a list. A life reduced to paperwork and speculation. Cold case. Closed, unofficially by time itself. But time has a way of circling back. In 2007, 8 years after Daniel Mercer vanished, a construction crew breaks ground on a new storage facility just 10 miles from where his car was found. It's routine work. Dry soil. Hard clay. Nothing unusual. Until the backhoe hits something that doesn't belong. Metal. Not debris. Not scrap. A container. Sealed. Buried deep enough that it shouldn't have been there at all. The crew stops immediately. Police are called. And just like that, the silence breaks again. Inside the container, they find items that shouldn't exist anymore. A watch. A set of keys. A folded piece of fabric stained, but preserved. Everything wrapped carefully, deliberately, almost respectfully. And at the bottom a plastic evidence bag. Not police issued, but labeled. In handwriting that no one recognizes. 3 words. Do not file. Investigators stare at it for a long time. Because they all understand what it means. This isn't random. This isn't disposal. This is a message. And messages mean someone wanted this to be found. The problem is no one knows who. The items are sent for analysis. Forensics confirms what no one wants to say out loud. The watch belonged to Daniel Mercer. The keys match his vehicle. The fabric traces back to fibers consistent with the shirt he was last seen wearing. 8 years buried in the desert, and suddenly, pieces of him are back. But not all of him. Never all of him. Detectives reopen the case. Old files are dragged out. Old interviews replayed. Old suspects reconsidered. And something strange begins to surface. Inconsistencies. Tiny ones. Almost invisible. But enough to shift the weight of the story. The gas station footage missing frames. The initial search reports altered timestamps. Even the report about Laura hearing noises edited. Not erased. Just changed. Someone had touched the file. Not recently. Back then. In 1999. Inside the department. That's when the investigation takes a turn no one expected. Because now, it's not just about a missing man. It's about who decided to bury the truth with him. And why. A name surfaces quietly at first. Detective Harold Finch. Lead investigator on the original case. Retired in 2003. Respected. Decorated. Untouchable. Until someone notices something they can't ignore. Finch was the officer who logged the original evidence. Finch was the one who signed off on the search perimeter. Finch was the last person to handle the case before it went cold. And Finch is the only one who can't explain the handwriting on that bag. Because it looks like his. But he swears it isn't. The tension builds slowly, like heat rising off asphalt. Internal Affairs steps in. Files are audited. Records re-examined. And the deeper they dig, the worse it gets. Missing logs. Unfiled reports. Interviews that were conducted but never documented. It's not just sloppy work. It's surgical. Precise. Intentional. Someone didn't just fail to solve the case. Someone made sure it wouldn't be solved. And now, 8 years later, the desert has given something back that was never meant to resurface. The question is no longer what happened to Daniel Mercer. The question is who buried him twice. Once in the ground. And once in the truth. Because whatever lies in that gap between disappearance and discovery is still out there. Still silent. Still watching. And maybe waiting. The desert doesn't forget, it just waits for the right moment to speak. By the time the evidence bag is logged into the reopened file, the atmosphere inside the department has already shifted. Conversations lower in volume. Doors close a little faster. Names are spoken more carefully now, like each syllable might carry consequences. Because the moment Detective Harold Finch's name enters the conversation, the case stops being just a cold case. It becomes something else. Something dangerous. Finch doesn't look like a man hiding anything when they bring him in. He's older now, slower, but his eyes are sharp, alert, tracking every movement in the room like muscle memory never left him. 30 years on the force will do that. It wires suspicion into your bones. He sits across from two investigators who weren't even in uniform when Daniel Mercer disappeared. And that matters. Because they don't carry the same loyalties. They don't carry the same fear. They slide the evidence bag across the table. 3 words staring back at him. Do not file. For a moment, Finch doesn't react. Then he exhales slowly, leans back, and shakes his head. That's not mine. It's immediate. Firm. Practiced. Too practiced. They press him. Ask about the container. The burial site. The missing logs. The altered timestamps. Finch answers everything. But he answers like a man navigating a minefield. Carefully. Precisely. Never stepping too far in any direction. He admits to errors. Minor ones. Administrative mistakes. Says the case was chaotic. Says resources were stretched thin. Says things slipped through the cracks. But when they ask about the evidence, why items belonging to Daniel Mercer were never logged, never processed, never even mentioned, his tone changes. Subtle. But enough. I never saw those items. A pause. Then he adds, almost as an afterthought. If they existed back then they weren't part of my case. The room goes quiet. Because that statement creates a hole. A massive, impossible hole. If the items existed in 1999 and Finch never saw them, then someone else did. Someone who had access. Someone inside. The investigation widens. And with it the pressure. They start pulling records from every officer who touched the case, even briefly. Patrol units. Evidence techs. Dispatch logs. Anyone who logged a minute, a mile, or a memo connected to Daniel Mercer's disappearance. And slowly, a pattern begins to emerge. Not obvious. Not clean. But there. One name appears more often than it should. Not in reports. Not in official documents. But in the margins. Officer Luis Ortega. At the time, a junior patrol officer. First responder to the scene. The one who initially called in the abandoned vehicle on Route 85. His report is short. Efficient. Nothing unusual. Too efficient. No mention of disturbed ground. No mention of secondary tire tracks. No mention of anything beyond the obvious. At first glance, it looks like good police work. Until someone notices what isn't there. The weather report from that night indicates strong winds moving through the area. Enough to shift sand, to blur footprints, to erase shallow impressions. But Ortega's report makes no mention of wind. No mention of environmental conditions at all. It's a small omission. But in a case built on nothing, small things matter. They bring Ortega in. He's nervous before he even sits down. Hands restless. Eyes unfocused. Like he already knows this moment has been coming for years. He says he remembers the call. Says it was routine. Says the car was just there. Empty. Silent. Wrong. But when they ask him to walk through the scene again, something fractures. Not in his words. In his timing. He hesitates. Just for a second. But it's enough. Because trained investigators don't just listen to what's said. They listen to what almost wasn't. You found the car at 6:42 a.m., one of them says quietly. What did you do next? Ortega swallows. I called it in. Secured the area. And then? I waited for backup. How long? Another pause. Longer this time. I don't remember. They slide a document across the table. Dispatch logs. Time-stamped. You waited 19 minutes before calling it in. Silence. The kind that stretches thin. What were you doing during those 19 minutes, Officer Ortega? His jaw tightens. Eyes drop to the table. And for the first time he doesn't answer. The room shifts. Because now, it's not just about missing evidence. It's about missing time. 19 minutes in the middle of nowhere, with no witnesses, no cameras, no accountability. 19 minutes that were never explained. And suddenly everything starts to feel different. They push harder. Ask about the container. The buried items. The possibility that something was removed from the scene before it was ever reported. Ortega shakes his head. Denies everything. But his voice isn't steady anymore. It cracks under pressure. Not enough to confess. But enough to confirm one thing. He's afraid. And fear always has a source. The breakthrough doesn't come from the interrogation room. It comes from storage. A forgotten locker in the evidence archive, flagged during the audit. It's been sealed for years, tagged under a case number that doesn't exist anymore. Misfiled. Misplaced. Or maybe hidden. They open it. Inside, they find a box. Dust-covered. Unremarkable. Until they lift the lid. And everything changes. Photographs. Dozens of them. Crime scene photos. But not the ones in the official file. These are different. Wider angles. Closer shots. Details that were never documented. And in one of them something that shouldn't be there. A second vehicle. Parked in the distance. Partially obscured by brush, but visible enough to be undeniable. It's not in any report. Not mentioned by any officer. Not logged, not processed, not questioned. It's just there. Watching. Like it had always been part of the scene, just erased from the story. The license plate is barely visible. But not completely. Forensics enhances the image. Runs the number. And gets a hit. The vehicle was registered in 1999. To a name no one expected. Laura Bennett. Daniel Mercer's fiancée. The room goes cold. Because that changes everything. Up until this moment, Laura was the grieving partner. The last person to see him. The voice that insisted he would never abandon his life. Now she's something else. Now she's connected. Directly. Physically. To the scene. A second car, hidden in plain sight. A presence never disclosed. A truth never told. They pull her original statement. Read it again. Line by line. She said she was home that night. Said she hadn't seen Daniel since the evening before. Said she didn't know why he would be on Route 85. But the photograph doesn't lie. Her car was there. Close enough to see. Close enough to matter. The question isn't whether she was involved. The question is why she lied. They move fast. Too fast for the silence to settle. Because cases like this, when they crack, they don't open slowly. They collapse. Laura Bennett is brought in. Older now. Different. But the same tension lingers beneath the surface. She walks into the room with the same quiet composure she had in 1999. But this time the investigators don't see grief. They see control. They place the photograph in front of her. She looks at it. And for a moment something flickers. Recognition. Gone as quickly as it appears. That's not my car, she says. The denial comes too quickly. Too clean. They don't respond right away. They let the silence stretch. Let it press in around her. Then they place the registration records beside the photo. Her name. her address, her signature. The room tightens. And this time she doesn't look away. But she doesn't speak either. Because the truth is sitting right in front of her now. And there's nowhere left to hide it. Outside, the Arizona sun burns just as hot as it did in 1999. The desert hasn't changed. But the story has. Because the deeper they dig, the clearer it becomes. Daniel Mercer didn't just disappear into the night. He stepped into something. Something planned. Something controlled. Something that involved more than one person. And now, after years of silence, the people who buried the truth are starting to feel the ground shift beneath them. Because the evidence didn't just reappear. It was returned. And that means someone out there wants this case opened. Wants the truth exposed. Or worse, wants it to be found. On their terms. Laura Bennett doesn't break knot at first. She sits there, eyes fixed on the photograph, her own car frozen in time behind a crime scene that was never supposed to include her. The room feels smaller now, tighter, like the walls themselves are leaning in to listen. "You want to explain it?" one of the investigators asks, voice low, controlled. Silence. Not the kind that comes from confusion. The kind that comes from calculation. Laura exhales slowly, fingers curling together on the table, then finally she speaks, but not with panic, not with fear, with precision. "I went looking for him." The words land flat. Measured. Too measured. She doesn't look up as she continues, her voice steady, almost rehearsed. "He didn't come home that night. He wasn't answering his phone. I drove out there because I didn't know where else to go." The explanation sounds reasonable. Almost believable. But it arrives 8 years too late. "You never mentioned that in your original statement," the investigator replies. A beat. "I wasn't asked." That answer hangs in the air longer than it should. Because it's technically true. And technically true is the most dangerous kind of lie. They push again. "Why didn't you call it in? If you were there, if you saw his car, why didn't you report it?" This time, there's a flicker. A crack beneath the surface. "I didn't see his car," she says quickly. "I drove past. I thought maybe I missed him." It doesn't fit. Not with the photograph. Not with the distance. Not with the angle. She wasn't just passing by. She was parked. Watching. Waiting. And they both know it. The room shifts again, the tension tightening like a wire pulled too far. Laura, the second investigator, says, softer now, almost sympathetic, "You were there at the same time Daniel disappeared. Your car was within visual range of his. That's not a coincidence." Her eyes finally lift. And there it is. Not fear. Not grief. Something colder. "I didn't hurt him." It's the first emotional statement she's made. And it's not a denial of being there. It's a denial of something else. Something more specific. The distinction doesn't go unnoticed. Because people rarely defend themselves against accusations that haven't been made. The interrogation pauses. Not because they're done. Because they've hit something. Something solid. And pushing too hard, too fast might break it in the wrong way. Outside the room, the theory begins to take shape. Not fully formed. But enough to change direction. What if Daniel Mercer didn't vanish into nothing? What if he walked into something waiting for him? Something arranged. Something orchestrated. And Laura Bennett wasn't just a bystander. She was part of the setup. But setups require more than one person. And that's where the shadow from the gas station comes back. The blurry figure. The one who stood just behind Daniel, close enough to matter, distant enough to avoid recognition. At the time, it was nothing. Now it's everything. They pull the footage again. Run it through updated enhancement software. Clean the grain. Stabilize the motion. Frame by frame, they rebuild the moment. Daniel enters first. Calm. Unaware. And then the figure follows. Same posture. Same distance. Consistent. Deliberate. Not random. Never random. This wasn't coincidence. It was proximity with purpose. They isolate the figure. Height estimation. Gait analysis. Body structure. And slowly a profile begins to emerge. Male. Approximately 6 feet. Broad shoulders. Confident stride. Not hesitant. Not cautious. Comfortable. That detail matters. Because it means he wasn't afraid of being seen. Which means he either didn't expect to be recognized, or he knew it wouldn't matter if he was. They cross-reference with known associates. Friends. Co-workers. Family. Anyone in Daniel's orbit who matches the physical profile. One name rises to the surface faster than the others. Ethan Cole. Daniel's business partner. Co-founder of a small but growing engineering firm. The two had built it together from nothing. Late nights. Shared risks. Shared rewards. By all accounts they were close. Trusted. Almost inseparable. But trust has a way of hiding fractures. Especially the kind that don't show until it's too late. They pull financial records. Start digging. And what they find shifts the ground again. 6 months before Daniel disappeared, the company had secured a major contract. High value. High stakes. Enough to change everything. But the distribution of ownership wasn't equal. Daniel held 60%. Ethan held 40%. Which meant control rested with Daniel. Unless something happened to him. Unless something removed him from the equation entirely. Suddenly motive enters the room. Quiet. Unassuming. But impossible to ignore. They bring Ethan in. He walks in differently than the others. Relaxed. Confident. Like a man who believes he has nothing to hide. Or everything to lose, but knows exactly how to protect it. He remembers the night. Says he last saw Daniel earlier that evening. Says they discussed work. Nothing unusual. Nothing tense. When they show him the gas station footage, he barely reacts. That could be anyone, he says. And he's right. Technically. But technically isn't enough anymore. They press him on the contract. On the ownership split. On what would happen if Daniel were no longer part of the company. Ethan leans back, folds his arms, and gives a small, almost amused smile. You think I killed my business partner for 40%? It's a good line. Simple. Dismissive. Designed to make the theory sound absurd. But they don't challenge the percentage. They challenge the timeline. 3 weeks after Daniel disappeared, one investigator says, sliding a document forward, you restructured the company. The smile fades. Slightly. Standard procedure, Ethan replies. You became sole owner. Silence. Just for a moment. Then. Someone had to keep things running. The justification comes quickly. Too quickly. Like it's been used before. Because it probably has. They let the silence stretch again. Let it press in. Let it do the work. And then they drop the final piece. We know Laura was there that night. This time Ethan doesn't respond immediately. The smallest pause. Barely visible. But it's there. And in a case like this, that's enough. Because now, the pieces aren't just scattered. They're starting to connect. Daniel. Laura. Ethan. A deserted highway. A second car. A shadow in the background. And 19 missing minutes. But the deeper they go, the more unstable it becomes. Because nothing lines up cleanly. Not yet. Not enough for charges. Not enough for certainty. Just enough for doubt. And doubt is where cases like this either break open or collapse completely. The next discovery doesn't come from interviews or evidence or even the past. It comes from something far more dangerous. Memory. A retired dispatcher reviewing archived call logs as part of the audit notices something odd. A call placed at 2:07 a.m. on the night Daniel disappeared. Incoming. Unlisted number. Duration 8 seconds. Too short for a conversation. Too long for a misdial. The call was routed through a secondary channel. One rarely used. One that doesn't record audio. Only metadata. And it was flagged. Not by the system. By a person. Flagged then cleared. No follow-up. No report. Just erased from relevance. Until now. They trace the origin. And when the result comes back, the room goes still. Because the call didn't come from a public line. It didn't come from a residence. It came from a mobile unit. A police-issued radio relay. Active in the field that night. Assigned to Officer Luis Ortega. The same officer who waited 19 minutes before calling in the abandoned car. The same officer whose report said nothing when it should have said everything. Now he's no longer just a gap in the timeline. He's a connection. A live wire running through every unanswered question. Because if Ortega made that call, who was he calling? And why only for 8 seconds? Instructions? Confirmation? Or something else entirely? Something that didn't need words. The investigation tightens again. Faster now. More aggressive. Because time is no longer just something that passed. It's something that was manipulated. Controlled. Used. And somewhere inside those missing minutes. Inside that buried container. Inside that silent call. Is the moment everything went wrong. Or exactly as planned. Because this was never just a disappearance. It was an event. Precise. Coordinated. Hidden in plain sight. And for 8 years it worked. Until the desert gave something back. And now the truth isn't just buried. It's moving. Shifting. Breaking through the surface piece by piece. And the people connected to it are starting to feel the weight of what they left behind. Because secrets don't stay buried forever. Especially not the ones that were never meant to disappear only to wait. The moment they connect the 8-second call to Officer Luis Ortega, the case stops breathing slowly and starts accelerating. Not steadily. Violently. Because an 8-second call doesn't exist by accident. Not in the middle of the night. Not routed through a restricted police relay channel. Not flagged and then quietly erased. It exists because someone needed to say something fast. Or hear something even faster. And now, for the first time since 1999, the timeline isn't just incomplete. It's compromised. They bring Ortega back in. This time, the room feels different. Not tense. Not cautious. Closed. Like whatever walks in with him isn't leaving the same. He knows it. The way his shoulders tighten before he even sits down. The way his eyes flick to the corners of the room, like his mapping exits that don't exist. They don't waste time. They drop the call log in front of him. 2:07 a.m. 8 seconds. Police relay. His unit. Who did you call? Direct. No build-up. No warning. Ortega stares at the paper. Doesn't touch it. Doesn't look up. I don't remember. The answer comes too quickly. Too flat. Like it's been waiting for the question. One of the investigators leans forward slightly, voice quieter now, but sharper. You flagged it. A beat. Then you cleared it. Another beat. That means you knew exactly what it was. Silence. Longer this time. Ortega's jaw tightens, muscles shifting under skin that suddenly looks too thin, too stretched. It was nothing, he says finally. Nothing. That word lands wrong. Because in this case nothing has already proven to be something. They don't argue. They don't raise their voices. They just slide another photo across the table. The second vehicle. Parked in the distance. Hidden, but undeniable. You missed that in your report too. Ortega's eyes flick to it. Just for a second. But in that second something breaks. Not outwardly. Internally. Like a structure finally giving under pressure it's been holding for years. I didn't miss it, he says. The words are quiet. Barely audible. But they hit harder than anything he's said so far. The room stills. Because that's not a denial. That's a correction. You didn't miss it, the investigator repeats slowly. So what did you do with it? Ortega closes his eyes. Just briefly. Then opens them again. And now there's something else there. Not fear. Not exactly. Recognition. Like he understands that whatever line he's been standing on he just stepped over it. I was told to ignore it. The words come out like they've been locked away for too long. Rusty. Heavy. Impossible to take back. By who? The question comes immediately. Too immediately. Because they already think they know the answer. But they need him to say it. Ortega hesitates. Not because he doesn't know. Because he does. And saying it makes it real. MOT cap tren, he mutters first, instinctively slipping into his native language, then correcting himself. A superior. Name. Silence again. The kind that presses harder than any accusation. Then finally. Finch. The air in the room shifts. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But enough. Because now, the thread connects. Directly. Cleanly. Detective Harold Finch. Lead investigator. The man who controlled the case from the inside. The man who signed off on the reports. The man who claimed he never saw the evidence that was buried in the desert. Now he's not just part of the story. He's at the center of it. Ortega exhales, like something has finally been released. But it's not relief. It's collapse. He told me it wasn't our scene, Ortega continues, voice low, distant. Said backup was already handling it. Said I didn't need to log everything. Just secure the car and wait. And the call. Ortega swallows. He called me. Everything stops. Because that flips the direction. Finch didn't just give orders later. He was already involved. Already aware. Before the official timeline even began. What did he say? The investigator asks, leaning in slightly. Ortega's hands tremble now. Subtle. But visible. Just stay where you are. Don't touch anything. I'm on my way. 8 seconds. That's all it took. 8 seconds to freeze a scene. 8 seconds to control a narrative. 8 seconds to decide what would be seen and what would disappear. The timeline reconstructs itself in real time. Daniel Mercer vanishes sometime after 1:13 a.m. Ortega arrives at 6:23 a.m., 19 minutes before the call is logged. At 2:07 a.m., Finch is already communicating with units in the field, before the scene is even officially reported. Which means one thing. He knew. Before anyone else was supposed to. How did Finch know about the car? One investigator asks, voice tight now. Ortega shakes his head. I don't know. But the answer doesn't matter anymore. Because the implication is louder than anything he could say. Finch wasn't reacting. He was anticipating. The next move is immediate. They bring Finch back in. No courtesy this time. No slow approach. Just the facts. The call log. Ortega's statement. The missing vehicle. The buried evidence. All of it laid out, piece by piece, until the room feels smaller than it should. Finch listens. Quietly. No interruptions. No reactions. Just watching. Calculating. Waiting. And when they finish, he leans back slightly, folds his hands, and lets out a slow breath. Lewis shouldn't have said that. Not denial. Not surprise. Control. Still control. You called him before the scene was reported, one investigator says. You instructed him not to log critical evidence. You removed items that were later found buried. That's obstruction. That's tampering. That's not what happened. Finch cuts in. Calm. Even. Unshaken. Then explain it. A pause. Not hesitation. Deliberation. I received a tip. The room stills. Because that's new. That's not in any report. Not in any file. Not in any memory. What kind of tip? The investigator asks. Finch's eyes shift slightly. Not away. Just inward. Like he's replaying something. Anonymous, he says. Early that morning. Said there would be a vehicle abandoned off Route 85. Said it was connected to something bigger. Bigger how? He didn't say. And you didn't log that. Another pause. Longer this time. No. Why not? Finch exhales again. And for the first time there's something beneath the surface. Not fear. Not guilt. Something closer to frustration. Because it didn't sound like a crime, he says. It sounded like a setup. The words hang there. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Set up for what? One investigator presses. Finch looks at him. Directly. Sharply. For me. The room shifts again. Because that wasn't expected. Not like that. Not so directly. You expect us to believe someone tipped you off about a crime scene to frame you. I expect you to consider that not everything you're looking at is what it seems. Deflection. Or truth. In this case they're starting to feel the same. Then why hide the evidence? The second investigator asks. Because it didn't belong there. The answer comes instantly. Like he's been holding on to it. Waiting for the moment to say it. That container, those items, they weren't part of the original scene. Silence. Confusion. Because that contradicts everything. Forensics. Timeline. Discovery. All of it. You're saying the evidence was planted. Finch nods slowly. Yes. And you just buried it. I secured it. The correction is immediate. Sharp. Controlled. You hid it in the desert for 8 years. I removed it from a compromised scene. The distinction is razor thin. But in his mind it matters. Why not log it? Why not report it? Finch's eyes hardened slightly. Because the moment it went into the system it would disappear. That line lands differently. Because suddenly the scope expands. This isn't just a corrupted case. It's a contaminated system. You're saying someone inside the department was manipulating evidence. I'm saying, Finch replies slowly, that by the time I arrived at that scene it wasn't clean anymore. The room goes quiet again. But this time it's not tension. It's uncertainty. Because if Finch is telling the truth, then everything they've uncovered so far might only be part of it. A layer. Not the whole. And Laura Bennett, one investigator, asks, was she part of this setup too? Finch doesn't answer immediately. And that hesitation, that single moment of silence, speaks louder than anything else. Because now, the story isn't just shifting. It's fracturing. Daniel Mercer, Laura Bennett, Ethan Cole, Luis Ortega, Harold Finch. 5 points. Connected. But not in a straight line. More like a web. Tangled. Deliberate. And somewhere in the center of it is something none of them are saying. Something that ties the tip, the call, the buried evidence, and the missing man into a single, controlled moment in time. Because if Finch didn't create the lie, then he protected it. And if he protected it, then he knew exactly what it was hiding. The only problem is, no one knows which part of his story is the truth. And which part was designed to survive this exact moment. The word setup doesn't fade after Finch says it, it spreads. Quietly at first, slipping through the cracks of the investigation, embedding itself into every report, every timeline, every reconstructed second of that night in 1999. Because once the possibility exists that the scene was staged, manipulated, designed, nothing can be taken at face value anymore. Not the car. Not the disappearance. Not even the evidence that resurfaced 8 years later like something deliberately returned from the grave. Inside the task force room, the energy shifts again. What was once a linear investigation, find the missing man, identify the suspects, has become something layered, unstable, constantly rewriting itself with every new detail. Because now there are two competing truths. 1. Daniel Mercer was the victim of a calculated disappearance, orchestrated by people close to him. 2. Daniel Mercer's disappearance was part of something larger, something constructed, and everyone involved was playing a role they didn't fully understand. And the most dangerous part? Both could be true. They go back to the beginning. Not the reports. Not the evidence. The night itself. August 17, 1999. 1:13 a.m., Daniel appears at the gas station. Calm. Controlled. Followed. 2:07 a.m., Finch receives the call. Or makes it. The distinction no longer feels clear. 6:23 a.m., Ortega arrives. 19 minutes unaccounted for. 6:42 a.m., the scene becomes official. But there's a gap. A wide, silent stretch of time between 1:13 and 2:07. 54 minutes where Daniel Mercer exists somewhere with someone and no one knows where. Until a new detail surfaces. Not from evidence. From memory. A waitress at a roadside diner 20 miles east of the gas station comes forward after seeing the case resurface on the news. At first, it seems insignificant. Just another delayed recollection, another face trying to attach itself to something larger. But then she says something that stops the room cold. I remember him because he looked like he was waiting for permission to leave. The wording is strange. Too specific. Too precise to ignore. She describes Daniel sitting alone at a booth near the back. Coffee untouched. Eyes fixed on the entrance. Not anxious. Not scared. Expectant. Like he knew someone was coming. Like he needed someone to arrive before he could move. What time was this? The investigator asks. She hesitates. After midnight, maybe around 1:30. That places him there after the gas station. Alive. Stationary. Waiting. And was he alone the entire time? Another pause. Then. No. The word lands softly. But it echoes. There was a man, she continues. Didn't sit. Just stood near the table. They didn't talk much. At least not that I could hear. Did you see his face? She shakes her head. Not clearly. He kept his back to the room. Anything else? She thinks for a moment. Then her expression tightens. He had something in his hand. What kind of something? I don't know, maybe a phone. Maybe a radio. But Daniel kept looking at it. Not at the man. At whatever he was holding. The room goes still again. Because now, the timeline isn't just filling in. It's sharpening. Daniel wasn't wandering. He wasn't lost. He was being directed. Held in place. Waiting for a signal. And then comes the detail that changes everything. When the man finally stepped away, she says quietly, Daniel didn't follow him. A beat. He waited. Waited for what? The waitress exhales slowly. For someone else. Now the web tightens. Because this wasn't a single interaction. It was a sequence. A controlled chain of movement. Daniel goes to the gas station. Then to the diner. Then somewhere else. Each step guided. Each pause intentional. And somewhere in that sequence he disappears. But not randomly. Not violently. Systematically. They pull traffic camera archives. Old, degraded footage from intersections that barely functioned even in 1999. Most of it is useless. Blurred lights. Ghostly shapes. Timestamps that drift out of sync. Until one frame catches something. A vehicle matching Daniel's car, heading southbound at 1:52 a.m. Followed. Not closely. But consistently. A second car. Keeping distance. Never overtaking. Never falling back. Just there. Like a shadow that refuses to detach. They enhance the image. Not enough for a plate. But enough for a make. A dark-colored sedan. Late 90s model. Common. Forgettable. Perfect. They cross-reference ownership databases from that time. Thousands of matches. Too many. Until they filter by proximity. Vehicles registered within a 50-mile radius of the diner. The list shrinks. Still large. But manageable. And then one name appears again. Not in the reports. Not in the official file. But connected to both Laura Bennett and Ethan Cole. A man named Victor Hale. No criminal record. No direct ties to law enforcement. But his name surfaces in financial documents linked to Ethan's company, an external consultant, brought in briefly during the contract negotiations 6 months before Daniel disappeared. Temporary. Peripheral. Easy to overlook. Except now he's not peripheral anymore. Now he's in the pattern. They dig deeper. And what they find doesn't make sense. Victor Hale doesn't exist. Not completely. The name is real. The documentation is real. But the details don't align. Addresses that lead nowhere. Phone numbers that disconnect. Employment history that overlaps in impossible ways. It's a constructed identity. Clean. Careful. Intentional. And suddenly the idea of a setup doesn't feel like a theory anymore. It feels like a design. Because now there's someone in the story who wasn't supposed to be traceable. Someone who moved through Daniel's life briefly, just long enough to matter. And then vanished. Like Daniel did. They bring Laura back in. This time, they don't start with accusations. They start with a name. Victor Hale. The reaction is immediate. Not denial. Not confusion. Recognition. A flicker in her eyes that she can't suppress fast enough. Do you know him? The investigator asks. She looks down. Shakes her head. No. But the lie is thinner now. Fragile. Cracking at the edges. He was connected to Ethan, the investigator continues. Worked with him during the contract negotiations. Laura says nothing. He was seen with Daniel the night he disappeared. Still nothing. He was likely the one at the diner. The one at the gas station. The one following him down Route 85. Silence tightens. Presses. Breaks. And finally. I didn't know his name, she says quietly. The words come out like surrender. Not complete. But enough. You did know him. A pause. Then a nod. He wasn't supposed to be part of it. The sentence changes everything. Because now it's not just about what happened. It's about what was supposed to happen. What was supposed to happen, Laura? Her breathing shifts. Shallow. Uneven. Like the past is catching up faster than she can control it. He said it was just a scare, she whispers. Just to push Daniel into signing. Signing what? The contract. Now the motive sharpens. Not disappearance. Not murder. Pressure. Control. Daniel had majority ownership. He held the power. And someone wanted it. Bad enough to stage something. To frighten him. To force his hand. But fear doesn't always follow the script. Sometimes it spirals. Sometimes it breaks. What went wrong? The investigator asks. Laura looks up. And for the first time there's real fear in her eyes. Not of them. Of the memory. He didn't react the way they expected. A beat. He didn't panic. Another. He refused. Silence. Heavy. Final. Because that's the moment everything changes. The moment the plan fractures. The moment pressure becomes something else. Something irreversible. What did they do? The investigator asks. Laura's lips part slightly. But no words come out. Because whatever happened next is the part no one has ever said out loud. The part buried deeper than the evidence. Deeper than the lies. Deeper even than the desert could hold. And now it's closer than it's ever been. Close enough to feel. Close enough to break through. But still. Just out of reach. Laura's silence doesn't end the conversation, it reshapes it. Because what she doesn't say becomes louder than everything she already has. The room holds still, every second stretching, thick with something unresolved, something pressing just beneath the surface. The investigators don't rush her now. They've learned enough to understand this isn't a moment you force open. This is a moment that fractures on its own. He refused, one of them repeats quietly. Laura nods, barely. And then? Her eyes drift, not to the door, not to the table, somewhere inward, somewhere locked in a night that never really ended. They weren't supposed to hurt him, she says. Not we. They. Distance. Separation. A line she's still trying to hold. But the line doesn't hold anymore. Who is they, Laura? The question comes, softer now, almost careful. She exhales slowly, shaking her head. I didn't know all of them. That word, all, lands like a crack through glass. Because it means there were more. More than Ethan. More than the man at the diner. More than the shadow in the footage. A group. Structured. Organized enough to plan something this precise and hide it this completely. You knew Ethan, the investigator presses. Another nod. And Victor. A hesitation. Then. Yes. The name hangs in the air like something toxic. Who else? Laura closes her eyes. And for a moment, it feels like she might finally say it. Finally pull whatever remains hidden out into the light. But when she speaks again, it's not a name. It changed that night. The investigators exchange a glance. What changed? The plan. Her voice is thinner now, stretched by memory. It wasn't supposed to go that far. How far did it go, Laura? Silence. Then a whisper. I didn't see it happen. That's not what they asked. And they both know it. But you know what happened. Her eyes open again. And now there's no control left. Only fragments. He was supposed to sign, that was it. Victor said they'd scare him, isolate him, make him understand what he was risking by saying no. Just enough pressure to make him fold. But he didn't. No. A pause. He got angry. That detail shifts everything. Because fear is predictable. Anger isn't. What did he do? Laura's fingers tightened together, knuckles whitening. He told them he'd go to the police. Said he knew something wasn't right. Said if they didn't back off he'd expose everything. The room stills. Because now the stakes aren't just financial. They're existential. If Daniel went to the police, whatever this operation was, it would collapse. What happened next? Laura shakes her head again, but this time it's not denial. It's resistance. Like she's standing at the edge of something she's spent years trying not to remember. I wasn't there when it happened, she repeats, louder now, as if volume can make it true. But you were close. A long pause. Then. I heard it. The words are barely audible. But they land harder than anything so far. Heard what? Laura swallows. A sound. The investigators lean in slightly, instinctively. What kind of sound? Her breathing falters. Metal. The word hangs in the air. Cold. Specific. A hit or something dropping. I don't know. It echoed. The desert sound. The same metallic echo witnesses reported before the silence took over. The same sound that was dismissed. Ignored. Forgotten. Now it's back. And then, one of them asks, voice low. Laura's eyes flick up, and for the first time there's something close to panic. Nothing. A beat. Just silence. That silence again. The one that follows something irreversible. The one that replaces everything that came before. What did you do? I stayed in the car. Another distance. Another separation. But you didn't leave. A pause. No. Why? Laura hesitates. Because the answer matters. Because the answer connects her to whatever came after. I was waiting. The word echoes back to the diner. Waiting. Always waiting. For what? She looks down again. For them to tell me it was over. But it wasn't. Not yet. Because if it had been, Daniel Mercer would have been found. And the case would never have gone cold. What happened when they came back? Laura's lips pressed together, tension visible now, no longer hidden beneath composure. They said it was handled. Handled how? They didn't say. Did you see Daniel? A long pause. Longer than any before it. Then. No. The lie is there. Thin. Fragile. Barely holding. And the investigators don't challenge it. Not yet. Because they don't need to. They already know she was closer than she's admitting. Closer to the truth. Closer to the moment. Closer to whatever ended Daniel Mercer's life or changed it forever. They shift direction. Not away from her. Around her. Victor Hale, one of them says. He wasn't just a consultant, was he? Laura doesn't answer. He controlled the plan. Silence. He controlled Daniel. A flicker. He controlled you. Her head lifts slightly. And that's all the confirmation they need. Because control explains everything. The diner. The gas station. The movement. The waiting. Even the silence. Because if someone was orchestrating this, then every piece wasn't random. It was placed. Where did they take him? The investigator asks. Laura shakes her head again. I don't know. But this time it feels different. Not a lie. Not completely. More like a truth with pieces missing. Or pieces she was never allowed to see. After the sound, the investigator continues. After the silence, what changed? Laura exhales slowly. Everything. A beat. They weren't the same when they came back. Who wasn't? Ethan. The name lands hard. He was shaken. That doesn't fit. Not with the calm, controlled man they interviewed. Not with the one who smiled when confronted with financial motives. He said it went too far, Laura continues. Said Victor didn't stop. The room tightens again. Because now the shadow has weight. Victor Hale isn't just a participant. He's escalation. He didn't stop what? The investigator asks. Laura's voice drops. I don't know. But the way she says it suggests she does. Or at least she knows enough to understand what it means. And Finch, the second investigator, asks suddenly. Where does he fit in? Laura freezes. Not visibly. But something inside her locks. I don't know anything about that, she says quickly. Too quickly. Because now, the web isn't just tightening. It's overlapping. Finch. Ortega. The call. The evidence. If Finch knew about the scene before it was reported. If Ortega was instructed to ignore parts of it. If evidence was removed, buried, hidden. Then this wasn't just a private operation. It touched law enforcement. At some level. And that changes everything. Because now the question isn't just what happened to Daniel Mercer. It's how far this goes. How many people knew? How many stayed silent? How many made sure this case didn't just go cold, but stayed buried? The interrogation ends not with a confession, but with something worse. Fragments. Half-truths. Pieces that don't fully connect but align just enough to reveal the shape of something larger. Something controlled. Something that started as pressure and became something irreversible. Outside, the desert wind picks up again, carrying that same low, hollow sound across the empty stretches of land. Metal. Echoing. Repeating. Like something unfinished. Because now, they know this much. Daniel Mercer didn't just disappear. He was taken. Moved. Controlled. And something happened in that moment after the plan broke. That no one has fully admitted. Not Laura. Not Ethan. Not Finch. Not Ortega. And definitely not Victor Hale. Because Victor Hale is still missing. No records. No trace. No past that holds. Just a name that shouldn't exist. Attached to a night that refuses to stay buried. And somewhere inside that night, inside that sound, inside that silence that followed, is the truth. Still waiting. Still hidden. Still just beyond reach. But closer now than it's ever been. The name Victor Hale doesn't sit still, it drifts through the case like something without weight, without anchor, touching everything and belonging nowhere. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because every other piece of this story, Laura, Ethan, Ortega, Finch, they all exist in records, in photographs, in systems that can be traced and verified. They can lie, they can hide, they can deflect, but they are real. Victor Hale isn't. Or at least not in any way that holds. And yet, he's at the center of it. The one who stood at the diner. The one who followed the car. The one who didn't stop. The one whose presence turns pressure into something else entirely. So they stop chasing people and start chasing patterns. Financial records come first. Not the obvious ones, the company accounts, the contract payouts, the documented transactions that paint a clean, respectable picture of a growing business. Those are too neat. Too expected. They go deeper. Personal accounts. Shell transfers. Microtransactions that slip under reporting thresholds. And buried inside layers of routine activity, they find it. A series of payments. Small. Consistent. Originating from Ethan Cole's account, routed through 2 intermediary banks and landing in accounts that don't stay open long enough to be questioned. The recipient names change. The account numbers shift. But the timing doesn't. Every payment lines up with a meeting. Every meeting lines up with movement. And every movement leads back to the same window of time. The months before Daniel disappeared. They map it out. Dates. Locations. Transfers. And slowly the shape emerges. Victor Hale wasn't hired once. He was paid repeatedly. Not as a consultant. As a service. The word isn't written anywhere. But it's implied in the structure. Controlled. Segmented. Hidden. Like something that wasn't meant to exist in the open. They cross-reference travel records. Ethan's movements. Laura's. Daniel's. And the overlaps start to stack. Too many coincidences. Too many shared spaces. Too many moments where paths cross without explanation. Hotels. Restaurants. Parking lots. Places where people meet without leaving traces. And in several of those locations security footage still exists. Old. Degraded. But usable. They review hours of it. Faces blur. Time distorts. Until, finally, a frame holds. A man stepping out of a dark sedan. Tall. Broad shoulders. Same posture as the figure at the gas station. Same controlled movement. He turns slightly. Just enough for a profile. And for a fraction of a second. He exists. Clear. Defined. Real. They freeze the frame. Enhance it. Run it through every system they have. Nothing. No match. No record. No identity. It's like the system rejects him. Or never knew him to begin with. But the face is there now. Not just a shadow. Not just a theory. A person. And that changes the weight of everything. Because now they're not chasing a ghost. They're chasing someone who made sure he looked like one. They take the image to Laura. No build-up this time. No slow approach. Just the photograph placed directly in front of her. She looks at it. And the reaction is immediate. Sharp. Uncontrolled. Her breath catches. Eyes widen. And for the first time since this reopened, she doesn't try to hide it. That's him, she whispers. No hesitation. No denial. Just recognition. Victor Hale. The name finally attaches to a face. And the moment it does, the room shifts. Because now, he's not just a missing piece. He's a fixed point. What do you really know about him, Laura? Her hands tremble slightly now. Not dramatically, but enough to show the control is slipping. He wasn't normal, she says. The word feels inadequate. Too small for what she's trying to describe. How? She hesitates. Searching. Not for a lie. For language. He didn't react to things, she says finally. Not the way people do. It was like everything was already decided in his head before it happened. Calculated. Predetermined. Controlled. He didn't improvise, she continues. He followed a plan. Always. Whose plan? The question lands harder than the others. Because it reaches beyond Victor. Beyond Ethan. Beyond Laura. Into something else. She doesn't answer. Not directly. But her silence shifts again. From resistance to fear. Because now, it's not just about what she did. It's about what she was part of. And what might still be out there. Did he work alone? The investigator asks. A slow shake of the head. No. Who else? I don't know. But this time it feels different. Not a lie. Not entirely. More like the edge of something she was never allowed to see. Something compartmentalized. Structured. Hidden even from the people inside it. Did Ethan know more? Another pause. Then. Yes. That answer comes easier. Faster. Because Ethan is something she can point to. Something real. Something present. Did Finch know? The question lands like a trigger. Laura stiffens. Eyes flick up. And for a moment everything in her expression changes. Because this isn't just a name. It's a connection. A link she didn't expect them to make. I don't know, she says. But the delay. The hesitation. The shift in her breathing. It all says something else. Because now the lines are crossing. Victor Hale. Ethan Cole. Laura Bennett. And somewhere above or around them. Harold Finch. Not reacting. Not responding. But aware. Possibly from the beginning. The investigation pivots again. Back to Finch. But this time with a new angle. Not as the man who buried evidence. Not as the man who protected the case. But as the man who might have recognized it for what it was. They pull his early reports. Not the final versions. The drafts. The notes. The handwritten entries that never made it into the system. And buried in those pages they find something overlooked. A phrase. Repeated twice. Crossed out both times. External interference. The words are faint. Almost erased. But still there. And now they matter. Because Finch saw something. Something he didn't fully understand. Or something he understood too well and chose not to put into record. They bring him in again. For the third time. But now the balance has shifted. They don't start with accusations. They start with the photograph. Victor Hale's face. Clear. Undeniable. Placed directly in front of him. Finch looks at it. Longer than expected. No immediate reaction. No denial. Just focus. Like he's looking at something he's been trying to remember. Or trying to forget. Do you know him? The investigator asks. Finch doesn't answer right away. His eyes narrow slightly. Not in confusion. In recognition. But not the kind they expect. Not the kind that says, I've seen him before. The kind that says, I've seen something like him. That man, Finch says slowly, wasn't part of the original call. The room stills. Because that's not the question they asked. But it's the answer he chose. What call? The second investigator presses. Finch exhales quietly. The tip. The anonymous tip that led him to the scene before it was officially reported. The voice on that call, Finch continues, I still fixed on the photograph, it didn't sound like him. A beat. Different cadence. Different tone. You're saying Victor Hale wasn't the one who tipped you off? Finch nods slightly. Yes. Then who did? Silence. Not hesitation. Absence. Because for the first time, Finch doesn't have an answer. And that's what makes it worse. Because now, the structure fractures again. Victor Hale wasn't the origin. He was a piece. A visible one. A controlled one. But not the source. Which means there's someone else. Someone above. Someone who knew about the scene. Knew about Daniel. Knew enough to call Finch directly before anything was reported. And that someone is still completely invisible. No name. No face. No record. Just a voice. And a moment in time where everything shifted before anyone even realized it had begun. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly, silent and unchanged. But the story beneath it is no longer buried. It's moving. Unraveling. Piece by piece. Revealing something far more complex than a failed plan or a broken deal. Because this wasn't just pressure. It wasn't just control. It was design. Led. Compartmentalized. Precise. And whatever sat at the top of it is still untouched. Still unseen. Still waiting. Just beyond the edge of everything they've uncovered so far. The moment Finch admits the voice on the call wasn't Victor Hale, the investigation stops feeling like a case and starts feeling like a structure. Led. Engineered. Built to hold under pressure. Because now, for the first time, there's a clear separation between the man who executed the plan and the one who may have created it. And that changes everything. The room doesn't move for a long moment after Finch says it. No one rushes to fill the silence. Because every instinct in the room is telling them the same thing. They've been looking at the wrong center. Victor Hale isn't the origin. He's the instrument. Controlled. Directed. Deployed. And if that's true, then somewhere above him is someone who never stepped into the light, never appeared in footage, never left a trace strong enough to follow. A voice. 8 seconds long. That's all they have. But 8 seconds is enough if you know how to listen. They pull the relay logs again. Every fragment of metadata tied to that call. Signal strength. Routing path. Transmission bounce points. Even degraded systems leave fingerprints if you look closely enough. And this time they find something they missed before. The call didn't originate from a single location. It bounced. Twice. First through a repeater tower just outside Phoenix. Then again through a secondary relay closer to the Route 85 corridor. That kind of routing isn't accidental. It's deliberate. Designed to obscure origin. Designed to fragment location data. Designed by someone who understands communication systems and how to break them. Who would know how to do that? One investigator asks. The answer doesn't come immediately. But when it does, it lands heavier than expected. Someone inside, Finch says quietly. Not defensive. Not deflecting. Certain. Because that kind of routing isn't common knowledge. Not in 1999. Not without training. Not without access. Which means the voice wasn't just external. It was connected. Somewhere within the same system that was supposed to respond to the crime. The same system that buried the evidence. The same system that let the case go cold. And suddenly the scope expands again. Because now, it's not just corruption. It's infiltration. They start pulling personnel records from that time period. Not just officers tied directly to the case, everyone with access to communications infrastructure, dispatch routing, relay maintenance. Names. Dozens at first. Then filtered. Reduced. Refined. Until a smaller group remains. People with the technical capability and proximity. And one name surfaces. Quietly. Unexpectedly. Not a detective. Not a patrol officer. A communication specialist. Assigned to relay maintenance and signal routing oversight in 1999. Name, Daniel Kessler. At first, it doesn't stand out. No disciplinary record. No complaints. No anomalies. A background that looks clean. Too clean. They dig deeper. And the gaps start to show. Employment history that begins abruptly. No verifiable records before 1995. Educational credentials that exist but don't fully align. References that can't be contacted anymore. It's not enough to prove anything. But it's enough to question everything. They pull archived shift logs. Cross-reference his schedule with the night of August 17th. And there it is. He was on duty. Monitoring relay activity. In position to route calls. In position to manipulate signal paths. In position to make an 8-second call disappear into noise. They bring Finch's attention back to the photograph. Victor Hale. Then slide another file across the table. Daniel Kessler. Do you recognize this name? The investigator asks. Finch looks at it. Longer than expected. Then shakes his head. No. But this time the denial feels different. Not false. Just incomplete. Did you ever interact with communication staff during the case? Another pause. Not directly. Indirectly. Finch exhales. Through dispatch. That's expected. Standard. Routine. But routine is where systems hide things best. They pivot. Bring in old dispatch recordings. Fragments that survived. Static filled, incomplete, barely usable. But enough to reconstruct patterns. And something emerges. Not in words. In timing. Certain transmissions delayed. Others redirected. Not random. Not frequent. But precise. Targeted. As if someone was shaping the flow of information in real time. Controlling who heard what. And when. They isolate one segment. Timestamped just minutes before Ortega's arrival on scene. A dispatch call that should have gone directly to his unit. But didn't. It was rerouted. Briefly. Then delivered. A delay of 7 seconds. 7 seconds that don't seem like much. Unless you're coordinating something. Unless those seconds matter. Unless those seconds align with something else. They check the timeline again. 2:07 a.m., the 8-second call. 6:23 a.m., Ortega arrives. 6:16 a.m., the rerouted dispatch. 7 seconds. 8 seconds. Small numbers. But in a controlled system they're not small at all. They're exact. They bring Ortega back in. Not to accuse. To listen. Before you arrived at the scene, the investigator asks, "Did anything feel off?" Ortega hesitates. Then nods. Yes. What? The radio. A beat. It cut for a second. Like interference. How long? I don't know. A few seconds. 7. 8. The numbers align again. What happened after? I got the call again. Same instruction. Same voice. Same voice as what? Ortega looks confused. Same voice as before. The room stills. Before what? The earlier call. 2:07 a.m. The 8-second transmission. You spoke to that voice twice. Ortega nods slowly. Yes. That changes everything. Because now, the voice isn't just a one-time anomaly. It's a presence. Active. Repeating. Controlling. What did it sound like? The investigator asks. Ortega frowns slightly, trying to remember. Calm, he says. Flat. No emotion. Like it already knew what I was going to do. That description echoes something else. Laura's words. He didn't react to things like everything was already decided. But she was talking about Victor. Which means the pattern isn't isolated. It's shared. Victor Hale. The voice on the line. Same behavior. Same control. Same absence of reaction. Which raises a question no one has asked out loud yet. What if Victor wasn't acting independently? What if he was following instructions in real time? The room tightens again. Because that means the plan wasn't just designed in advance. It was being adjusted. Guided. Live. Which requires oversight. Presence. Someone watching it unfold. Someone who could see the variables shift and respond instantly. Someone like Daniel Kessler. But even that feels incomplete. Because Kessler had access. He had capability. But did he have authority? Or was he just another piece? Another layer in something that extends further up? They dig into his records again. Deeper. Past employment. Financials. Connections. And this time they find something that doesn't fit. A single transfer. Large. Out of place. Deposited into his account 3 weeks after Daniel disappeared. The source. Untraceable. Not hidden. Erased. Like it was never meant to exist in the first place. But the timestamp remains. And that's enough. Because it aligns with something else. The company restructure. Ethan becoming sole owner. Control shifting. Money moving. Not just through visible channels but through hidden ones. And suddenly the layers collapse into something clearer. Ethan funds the operation. Victor executes it. Laura facilitates it. Ortega protects the scene. Finch contains the evidence. And somewhere inside the system, Kessler, or someone above him, controls the flow. The voice. The timing. The unseen hand that keeps everything aligned. Until something breaks. Until Daniel refuses. Until the plan goes too far. And then everything changes. Because the structure doesn't collapse. It adapts. It absorbs the failure. Rewrites the outcome. Buried evidence. Altered reports. Silenced timelines. A case that doesn't just go cold, but stays frozen. Perfectly. For 8 years. Until something forces it back to the surface. And now every piece is moving again. Every layer exposed. Except one. The voice. Still nameless. Still faceless. Still the only part of this entire operation that no one has seen. No one has identified. No one has touched. And yet, it's the one that controlled everything. The voice becomes the center not because they can find it, but because they can't. Everything else in the case now has edges. Faces. Names. Records that can be pulled apart and examined under pressure. Even Victor Hale, once a ghost, now exists in fragments, captured in light, anchored in memory. But the voice remains untouched. No face. No file. No origin that holds. Just 8 seconds of control repeated twice, shaping a night that still hasn't fully revealed itself. And the more they try to define it, the more it begins to feel like something designed not to be traced. Not just hidden. Erased. They isolate the relay pathways again. Phoenix Tower. Secondary repeater. Route 85 corridor. Each bounce mapped, reconstructed, modeled. And this time, instead of trying to follow the signal forward, they reverse it. Strip away the routing layers. Peel back the misdirection. And look for the earliest possible point of origin. Not the exact location. Just the first place it could have existed before it was fragmented. The result isn't clean. It never is. But it narrows something. A zone. A radius. Less than 5 miles wide. Centered on a place no one expected. A decommissioned communications facility. Closed in 1997. 2 years before Daniel Mercer disappeared. Officially, it had been stripped. Equipment removed. Systems shut down. Left empty. Forgotten. But records show something unusual. Maintenance logs. Sparse. Inconsistent. But present. Someone had accessed the site after it was supposed to be inactive. Not regularly. Not enough to raise alarms. Just enough to keep something alive. They move on it immediately. No announcement. No external communication. Because whatever this is has already proven it knows how to listen. The facility sits alone in the desert. Concrete shell. Rusting antenna towers. Dead windows staring out into nothing. It looks abandoned. It feels abandoned. But the moment they step inside, that illusion cracks. The air is wrong. Not stale. Not untouched. There's movement here. Recent. Subtle but undeniable. Dust disturbed in patterns that don't match natural flow. Footprints. Faint. Lead. Not just one set. Not just recent. Repeated. They move deeper. Flashlights cutting through dim corridors that shouldn't feel this tight. Rooms stripped of visible equipment but not empty. Wires. Old mounts. Connection points where something used to be or still is. And then they find it. A single room near the back. Door partially ajar. Inside a setup that doesn't belong to 1999. Or even to the years immediately after. It's newer. Not modern. But updated. Maintained. Functional. A relay station. Compact. Self-contained. Capable of routing signals through multiple pathways. capable of doing exactly what they saw in the logs. Obscuring origin. Fragmenting location. Controlling communication. And sitting at the center of it. A chair. Simple. Metal. Facing a console that still hums with low, persistent energy. Not loud. Not obvious. But alive. The room goes still. Because this isn't history. This is presence. Or it was. Not long ago. They search the area. Drawers. Panels. Hidden compartments. And in one of them they find something small. Almost insignificant. A recorder. Old. Portable. The kind used for logging transmissions. It shouldn't be there. It shouldn't still work. But when they power it on, it does. A faint crackle. Then silence. Then a voice. Distorted. Fragmented. But unmistakable. Calm. Flat. Controlled. The room tightens instantly. No one speaks. No one moves. Because they're hearing it now. Not from memory. Not from reconstruction. The real thing. This is not the point of failure. The words cut through the static. Measured. Precise. This is the correction point. A pause. Then. Proceed. The recording ends. Just like that. No context. No explanation. Just instruction. And the language is wrong. Not criminal. Not emotional. Systematic. Like a process. Like Daniel Mercer wasn't a person in that moment. But a variable. Something that deviated from expectation. Something that needed to be corrected. They rewind it. Play it again. And again. Each time, the same thing stands out. The tone. Not just calm. Detached. Like whoever is speaking isn't reacting to events. They're managing them. They take the recorder back. Run voice analysis. Compare it to everything they have. Dispatch recordings. Officer communications. Archived interviews. Nothing matches. Not Finch. Not Ortega. Not anyone in the department. Then they run it against Victor Hale. The footage. The diner. The limited audio they've reconstructed from ambient sources. Still nothing. Close in cadence. Close in rhythm. But not the same voice. Which confirms it. Victor wasn't the voice. He was receiving it. Executing it. The realization settles heavily. Because now they're not looking for a man. They're looking for something behind the man. Something that designed the plan. Adapted it. Corrected it in real time. And remained completely unseen while doing it. They go back to Kessler. Pull everything. Financials. Communications. Personal history. And this time they stop looking for what's there. They look for what's missing. Gaps. Discontinuities. Places where the record should continue but doesn't. And they find one. A period of 6 months. Leading up to August 1999. Kessler's activity drops. Not completely. But significantly. Fewer logged hours. Fewer recorded movements. Like he was working but not on anything official. Off the books. Off the record. And then, right after Daniel disappears, it spikes. Activity returns. Normal. Consistent. Clean. Like whatever he was involved in ended. or transitioned. They bring him in. Daniel Kessler. For the first time. He doesn't look like what they expected. No edge. No tension. Just ordinary. Almost forgettable. The kind of person you don't notice. Which, in this case, might be the most dangerous thing of all. He sits down. Hands resting calmly in front of him. Eyes steady. No flicker of concern. No visible reaction to the weight of what's been uncovered. They place the recorder on the table. Press play. The voice fills the room again. This is not the point of failure. Kessler listens. Still. Focused. No interruption. No reaction. Until it ends. Then he looks up. And for the first time, there's something in his expression. Not fear. Not surprise. Recognition. You found it, he says quietly. The words land harder than any denial. Because they're not defensive. They're observational. Like he expected this moment. Eventually. You know what this is, the investigator says. Kessler nods slightly. Yes. Then explain it. A pause. Not hesitation. Processing. This isn't what you think it is. The line echoes something they've heard before. From Finch. From Laura. From everyone connected to this. And it's starting to sound less like deflection. And more like a warning. What is it, then, the investigator presses? Kessler leans back slightly. Not relaxed. Just measured. Containment. The word hangs in the air. Heavy. Unclear. Containment of what? Kessler's eyes shift briefly. Not away. Just inward. Like he's deciding how much to say. How much do you actually know about Daniel Mercer, he asks. The question flips the room. Because suddenly they're not the ones asking. And that's where it becomes clear. This case was never just about what happened that night. It was about something before it. Something Daniel was part of. Something he may have discovered. Or interfered with. Something that required a response. A system. A plan. A correction. And now for the first time. They're standing at the edge of it. Not just the crime. But the reason behind it. And whatever that reason is. It's been buried deeper than anything else in this case. Not in the desert. Not in the files. But in something far more controlled. Far more deliberate. And far more dangerous. Because if this was containment, then the real question isn't what happened to Daniel Mercer. It's what needed to be contained so badly that an entire reality had to be rewritten around it. The word containment doesn't settle, it distorts everything around it. Because once it's spoken, nothing in the case feels like an accident anymore. Not the delays. Not the silence. Not the buried evidence. Not even the disappearance itself. It feels managed. Kessler doesn't look like a man cornered. He looks like a man deciding how much of the truth is survivable in a room that isn't prepared to hear it. You're not investigating a crime, he says quietly, fingers still resting on the table, unmoving. You're stepping into a response. The investigator across from him doesn't blink. A response to what? Kessler's gaze holds steady, but something shifts behind it, calculation, not fear. To a deviation. The same language as the recording. Systematic. Impersonal. Like Daniel Mercer wasn't a person in the equation but a disruption. A deviation from what, the second investigator presses. Kessler exhales slowly, like the answer requires weight. From a controlled outcome. The room tightens. Because now the language isn't just strange, it's precise. Controlled outcome. Correction point. Containment. This isn't how people describe crimes. It's how they describe systems. What system? The investigator asks. Kessler tilts his head slightly. You're still assuming it's something you can map cleanly. That's what we're trying to do. And that's the problem. Silence. Because for the first time someone isn't just resisting the investigation. They're reframing it. Daniel Mercer wasn't supposed to disappear, Kessler continues. Not like that. A pause. He wasn't even supposed to be involved. That lands harder than anything else. Because it breaks the core assumption. That Daniel was the target. He became one, Kessler adds. How? The investigator asks, voice sharper now. Kessler doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he looks at the recorder on the table. At the voice. At the fragment of something that shouldn't exist. He saw something he wasn't supposed to see, Kessler says finally. What? Another pause. Longer this time. He understood something he wasn't supposed to understand. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're going to get. The frustration in the room spikes. Because this isn't deflection anymore. It's obstruction wrapped in ambiguity. You're telling us a man disappeared because he understood something, the second investigator snaps. I'm telling you, Kessler replies calmly, that by the time you think something starts you're already inside it. The words settle like something heavier than logic. Because they don't just resist clarity. They erase the idea of a clear beginning. Start from the beginning, the first investigator demands. Daniel. Ethan. Laura. Victor. You. Explain how it connects. Kessler's eyes flick between them. Measuring. Then he leans forward slightly. Not to confess. To correct. Ethan didn't build the plan, he says. He funded part of it. That aligns. Partially. Victor didn't design it, Kessler continues. He executed a segment. Segment. Another system word. Laura didn't initiate it, he adds. She facilitated access. The pattern is clear now. Each person a function. A role. Not independent actors. Components. And you? The investigator asks. Kessler pauses. Then. I maintained continuity. The phrase lands cold. What does that mean? It means when variables shift, someone has to make sure the structure doesn't collapse. Structure of what? Kessler doesn't answer. Instead, he looks directly at them. And for the first time there's something behind the calm. Not fear. Not guilt. Something closer to warning. You're asking questions as if this was isolated, he says. As if Daniel Mercer was the center of it. A beat. He wasn't. The room stills. Because if Daniel wasn't the center, then this case has been misframed from the start. Then what was? The investigator asks. Kessler exhales slowly. Then says it. The operation. The word echoes differently than the others. Because it implies scale. Beyond individuals. Beyond a single night. What operation? Silence. But this time it's not empty. It's loaded. Because Kessler isn't refusing to answer. He's deciding whether they're ready to hear it. You already saw part of it, he says finally. The relay system. The routing. The control. That's infrastructure, the investigator replies. Not a motive. It's both. The answer is immediate. Flat. Confident. Control of information, Kessler continues. Control of perception. Control of sequence. A pause. Control of reality at a scale small enough to be invisible. The room shifts. Because now the language isn't just abstract. It's unsettling. You're talking about manipulation, the second investigator says. I'm talking about management. Of people. Of outcomes. The distinction feels deliberate. And dangerous. Daniel disrupted that, the first investigator says. Kessler nods once. Yes. How? Another pause. Then. He wasn't supposed to connect the patterns. What patterns? Kessler's eyes narrow slightly. Not in anger. In focus. Movements that didn't align. Decisions that didn't match expected behavior. Delays that shouldn't exist. The investigators exchange a glance. Because those are the exact things they've been uncovering. Inconsistencies. Timing gaps. Altered reports. You're saying he figured out something like this was happening. Kessler doesn't answer directly. But he doesn't deny it either. He started asking questions, Kessler says. Not the kind you ask when you think something is wrong. A beat. The kind you ask when you realize something is controlled. Silence. Because now the motive shifts again. Daniel wasn't just resisting a contract. He was noticing something larger. Something systemic. Something that extended beyond business. Beyond personal relationships. Something that required containment. What was the original plan, the investigator asks. Kessler leans back again. Not relaxed. Just settling into a version of the truth he's willing to give. To redirect him, he says. Redirect how? Discredit. Isolate. Reframe his behavior so anything he said wouldn't be believed. The strategy is cold. Efficient. And disturbingly plausible. And when that failed, Kessler's gaze drops briefly. Then lifts again. That's when the correction phase began. The words echo the recording. This is not the point of failure. This is the correction point. What happened during that phase? Silence. But this time it feels heavier. Because this is the moment. The edge. The point where everything either breaks open or seals shut again. Kessler looks at them. Really looks. As if weighing whether the next sentence changes everything or nothing at all. You've been asking what happened to Daniel Mercer, he says slowly. A pause. But that's the wrong question. The room tightens again. Because they can feel it. The shift. The pivot. The thing they've been circling this entire time. The right question, Kessler continues, voice lower now, is what happened after he disappeared. A beat. Because that's where the silence has always been. Not the moment itself. But everything that followed. The case didn't go cold, Kessler says. It lands like something final. It was stabilized. The word echoes harder than anything before it. Stabilized. Not ignored. Not forgotten. Maintained. Like a system brought back into balance. After disruption. After deviation. After correction. You buried the evidence, the investigator says. We contained the variables, Kessler replies. You erased the truth. We preserved the structure. The difference between those two statements is everything and nothing. Because from where they are sitting, it all leads to the same place. A man vanished. A story rewritten. A case frozen in time. But from where Kessler sits, it's something else entirely. A system maintained. An outcome restored. A deviation removed. The only problem is They still don't know what Daniel Mercer actually found. What he understood. What was important enough. Dangerous enough. To justify everything that followed. And Kessler is the only one in the room who does. But whether he's going to say it, or let it stay buried where it's been all along, is something no one can predict. Because this was never just about truth. It was about control. And control doesn't give itself up easily. Kessler doesn't answer immediately. Not because he's avoiding the question. Because he's choosing where the story continues from. The room feels different now. Not tense in the way interrogations usually are, but focused, like everyone understands they've crossed a threshold. What comes next won't just clarify the case. It will define its meaning. The truth Daniel Mercer uncovered, Kessler says finally, wasn't a single event. He folds his hands together. It was a pattern. The investigators remain silent. Patterns are harder to hide than incidents, he continues. Incidents can be buried. Patterns have to be disrupted. Disrupted how, the first investigator asks. Kessler looks up. By removing the person who can see them. The implication lands. Not subtle. Not metaphorical. Direct. You're saying he identified something systemic, the second investigator says. Something repeatable. Kessler nods once. Yes. And that's why he was targeted. Kessler doesn't correct that. Doesn't deny it. Just lets the conclusion stand. A long silence follows. Then the investigator leans forward slightly. Explain the pattern. Kessler exhales. This is where most people misunderstand what happened. How so? They assume the operation was about control of a single outcome. A pause. It wasn't. He glances briefly at the recorder again. It was about controlling variability. The phrase feels technical. Deliberate. Variability in what, the investigator presses. In behavior. In timing. In response. Kessler's voice remains even. People don't act randomly. Given enough data, their decisions can be predicted within margins. That's not new. No, Kessler agrees. But it becomes powerful when you can influence those margins. The investigators exchange another glance. Influence how? By shaping the conditions around the decision. He continues before they can interrupt. Information delays. Selective communication. Controlled exposure. Small adjustments in what someone knows and when they know it. The pieces start aligning again. Dispatch delays. Rerouted calls. Signal interference. All of that the second investigator says slowly. Was part of it, Kessler finishes. A beat. Not random. Not incidental. Calibrated. Silence settles. Because now the earlier anomalies aren't anomalies anymore. They're inputs. Daniel noticed that, Kessler says. How will the first investigator asks. He worked near it, Kessler replies. Not officially. But he had access to enough information to start seeing inconsistencies. Why him? Kessler hesitates. For the first time there's a hint of something else. Not emotion exactly. But recognition. Because he wasn't supposed to be involved. That answer is circular. But intentional. Explain. Kessler nods slightly. He wasn't part of the system. He didn't rely on it in the same way others did. So he could see it without bias. Yes. And once he saw it, he started testing it. The room sharpens again. Testing how? By asking questions that shouldn't have had answers. Kessler pauses. Or by asking the same question in slightly different ways and comparing the responses. The investigators understand immediately. Looking for inconsistencies. Kessler nods. Yes. And he found them. Another pause. Yes. The word is quiet. But definitive. What kind of inconsistencies? Kessler leans back slightly. In timing. In routing. In how information was delivered. He looks at the investigator directly. Calls that should have gone through immediately didn't. Reports that should have matched didn't. Instructions that should have been consistent weren't. Each example mirrors what they've uncovered. Once he saw that, Kessler continues, he stopped treating it as coincidence. What did he think it was? Kessler's answer is measured. A system. The word lands again. He believed something was coordinating outcomes, Kessler adds. Not just reacting to them. And he was right. Kessler doesn't respond. But he doesn't deny it either. Then what did he do? The investigator asks. Kessler's expression tightens slightly. He documented it. The room goes still. Records. Notes. Observations. Comparisons. Where are they now? Kessler shakes his head. Gone. By who? By the same process that removed him. The answer is careful. Non-specific. But consistent with everything else. You're saying his evidence was eliminated along with him? Yes. Why not just ignore him? Kessler looks at them again. Because he wasn't ignoring it. That's the key difference. If someone identifies a system and starts proving it exists, he continues, you don't just leave them in place. Why not? Because systems depend on remaining unseen. Silence follows. Because that statement reframes the entire situation. Not as a cover-up, but as a protection mechanism. Containment, the investigator says again. Kessler nods. Yes. To prevent exposure. Yes. Exposure of what exactly? Kessler pauses. Longer this time. And when he speaks, his voice is quieter. Control. The word feels heavier now. Not abstract. Not theoretical. Real. If Daniel had been allowed to continue, Kessler says, he would have eventually proven that certain outcomes were not independent. That they were influenced. Yes. And that would compromise the entire structure. Exactly. So removing him was necessary. Kessler doesn't answer immediately. But when he does, it's not an endorsement. It's an explanation. In the context of the system, he says, yes. The investigators don't like that answer. But they understand it. You keep referring to this as a system, the first investigator says. Who designed it? Kessler's eyes shift slightly. That's not something you can attribute to a single person. Then who oversees